December 6th, 1917. 8:50 in the morning. In Halifax, Canada, thousands of people are standing at their windows, watching the most exciting thing they've seen all year. A ship is on fire in the harbor. Children are late for school because of it. Workers press against factory glass. It's beautiful in a way. Black smoke, orange flames, no sound, but distant crackling. None of them know what's inside that ship. 2,900 tons of high explosives. Enough to produce the largest man-made explosion in history up to that point. In 14 minutes, nearly 2,000 of these people will be dead. And one telegraph operator, 200 meters from the fire, is about to type the most important message of his life, knowing he won't survive sending it. This is the story of the morning a city disappeared. To understand what happened, you need to understand what Halifax was in 1917. The First World War is in its fourth year. Halifax is one of the most important ports in North America, the gathering point for convoys carrying soldiers, supplies, and ammunition across the Atlantic. The harbor is crowded, rushed, and running on wartime nerves. The war has made this quiet colonial town rich and busy. The population has swollen with soldiers, sailors, and factory workers. Ships loaded with dangerous cargo pass through every single week, so often that nobody thinks about it anymore. That's the thing about risk. Repeat it enough times without consequence, and it starts to look like safety. On the morning of December 6th, the harbor is doing what it always does. Tugboats, ferries packed with commuters, a neighborhood called Richmond sloping down to the water, wooden houses, schools, churches, the busiest piers in the city. Life 10 meters from the shipping lane. Meet the first ship, Mont Blanc, a French freighter. 4 days earlier, in New York, she was loaded like a floating bomb, 2,300 tons of picric acid, 250 tons of TNT, 62 tons of gun cotton, and stacked on her deck, barrels of benzol, high-octane fuel. A single spark would be enough. The crew wasn't even allowed to smoke. The second ship, Emo, a Norwegian vessel chartered to carry relief supplies to occupied Belgium. Her captain is behind schedule and in a hurry. One ship is entering the harbor, the other is leaving. Between them, the Narrows, a channel less than 500 meters wide. Maritime rules are simple. Keep to your right, like on a road. But Emo is on the wrong side of the channel. She'd been forced there dodging other ships, and stayed. Mont Blanc signals. Emo signals back, and holds course. At the last moment, both captains make evasive maneuvers. The maneuvers cancel each other out. At 8:45 a.m., Emo's bow cuts into Mont Blanc's side. The collision itself is almost gentle, a scrape, a shudder. On any other ship, it would mean paperwork. But sparks fly. The benzol barrels on deck rupture, and the fire begins. The French crew knows exactly what's under their feet. They don't fight the fire, there's no point. They row for the far shore, screaming warnings. They're screaming in French, almost nobody in Halifax understands. And the burning Mont Blanc, abandoned and unmanned, drifts slowly, almost peacefully, straight toward the city. She comes to rest against Pier 6, in the heart of the working-class North End. Not everyone runs. The crew of the tugboat Stella Maris sees the danger and does the opposite. They try to fix it. They attach a line to the burning freighter and attempt to tow her away from the pier. A handful of men pulling a floating bomb with a rope. They are still trying when time runs out. The fire department dispatches an engine, the Patricia, the city's pride, its first motorized fire truck. Crowds gather along the waterfront. Everyone is watching the ship. The ship is watching them back. 200 meters from Pier 6 sits the Richmond railway station.
Inside, Vince Coleman, 45 years old, train dispatcher. A quiet man with a wife and 4 children. A sailor bursts through the door with the truth nobody on the streets knows. That ship is a munitions carrier, and it is going to explode. Get out, now! Coleman starts to run. Then he stops. He remembers. The morning train from St. John is due any minute. 300 passengers heading straight into the harbor. He goes back to his desk, and with the burning ship in his window, he taps out a message down the line. Hold up the train. Ammunition ship afire in harbor, making for Pier 6 and will explode. Guess this will be my last message. Goodbye, boys. The newspapers would later disagree on his exact words. On what he did, there is no disagreement. He stayed at his key. At 9:04 and 35 seconds, Mont Blanc ceases to exist. The blast is equal to nearly 3 kilotons of TNT. Until the atomic bomb, it will remain the largest explosion ever produced by human beings. The ship doesn't sink. It evaporates, torn into white-hot fragments, raining down for miles. Her anchor, weighing over half a ton, lands 4 kilometers away. The harbor floor is exposed for an instant, scraped bare by the shockwave. Then the water comes back, a tsunami rising 18 meters above the high water mark, throwing ships onto the land.
Within 1 second, everything within a kilometer is simply gone. Schools, churches, factories, the entire district of Richmond. 1,600 buildings destroyed. The shockwave shatters windows tens of kilometers away. And here is the cruelest detail. Thousands of people were watching the fire through glass. When the windows blew in, nearly 6,000 suffered eye injuries. Dozens were blinded for life. The blast is felt over 100 kilometers away. People on Prince Edward Island hear it and wonder if a ship has gone down off their own coast. In Halifax itself, survivors describe the same strange sequence: a flash, a push of air like a giant hand, and then silence, because their eardrums are gone. Nearly 2,000 people are dead. 9,000 are injured. The train Coleman warned stopped safely outside the blast zone. Vince Coleman was killed at his desk. His message survived him. Because of it, incoming trains were held back, and rail crews became some of the first organized rescuers to reach the ruined city. You would think the disaster ends there. It doesn't. That night, a blizzard hits Halifax, one of the worst in years. 40 centimeters of snow fall on a city with no windows, no roofs, and thousands of people still trapped under rubble. Survivors freeze, searching for their families by hand, in the dark. And yet the snow is where the miracle stories come from. Rescuers pulling at rubble hear crying under a collapsed house and find a baby girl, not yet 2 years old, alive more than a full day after the blast, shielded from the fire by the iron ashpan of a stove. The newspapers will call her Ashpan Annie. She will live into her 90s. For every miracle, there are darker arithmetic problems. So many of the dead are children that the city runs out of small coffins. Entire families vanish from the records in a single line. On the Dartmouth shore, the blast wipes out a centuries-old Micmac community at Tufts Cove, a loss history books will barely mention for decades. Help comes fast, and from an unexpected direction. The city of Boston loads a train with doctors, nurses, and supplies the very same night. It pushes north through the blizzard for 2 days. The eye injuries change medicine. With thousands of victims blinded or half-blinded by flying glass, Halifax becomes an unlikely world center of eye surgery and rehabilitation, experience that helps build permanent institutions for the blind across Canada. Even the city's rebuilding leaves a mark.
An entire neighborhood, the Hydrostone, rises from the ruins as one of Canada's first planned public housing projects. You can walk through it today. Then come the questions. An inquiry blames Mont Blanc's captain and pilot first. The public wants villains. Charges collapse. Courts eventually split responsibility between both ships. No one is ever punished. Because the truth is more uncomfortable than a villain. A rushed captain, a wrong lane, an unlucky spark, a drifting hull. Half a dozen small, ordinary decisions, each survivable on its own. Together, they erased a city. More than a century later, every December, a giant Christmas tree lights up in the middle of Boston. It's a gift. Halifax sends one every year. A thank you, now over 100 years old, for the train that came through the snow. The harbor was rebuilt, the rules of navigation were rewritten, and Vince Coleman's telegraph key is in a museum in Halifax, next to the story of the last message. Disasters like this are rarely caused by one big mistake. They're caused by small ones, lined up in exactly the wrong order. That's what this channel is about, reading the archives to find the moment the chain could have been broken. Next time, a bridge whose chief engineer received. Subscribe so you don't miss it.